Shireen Haskell is a member of the Israeli Knesset for New Hope, a right-wing party, and a former Likud member. I'm connecting you to her now in Tel Aviv. Thank you for joining us. Joe Biden wants a de-escalation, and he wants a de-escalation today. That is a significant change in U.S. messaging, and one that many in his party on the left and many across the international community will applaud. Earlier, the Israeli military says it is, quote, preparing for more days of conflict. Is that now still likely?
Well, everybody wants a de-escalation. We all want it to stop. We all want Hamas bombing to stop. I mean, Israeli families and children have been in shelters for days now with post-traumatic stress, with alarms going on, with bombardments. Obviously, we want to stop this situation, and there is a solution. The one solution is that Hamas stop firing rockets towards Israeli cities and Israeli civilians. Once they'll do that, then definitely there will be a de-escalation or a stop of this situation.
Right. That is, you say everybody wants a de-escalation. That is not strictly true. I've been told by a number of stakeholders involved in mediation. Hang on. I've been told by a number of stakeholders involved in mediation that Israel is not interested in a ceasefire at this point.
Well, there's two types of ceasefire. There's a ceasefire when we go back to a normal life, to a somewhat of an option of living side by side on different borders. And there's a ceasefire that Hamas wants now, which is basically to stop for a while it's actually accumulating more weapons and more missiles in order to continue their bombardments and throwing rockets towards Israeli cities. That kind of ceasefire is not a real ceasefire. Once they stop targeting and shooting Israeli civilians, Israeli homes, Israeli cities, then there'll definitely be a de-escalation. But as you said, there's one side that doesn't want that. Hamas is benefiting from this situation. Hamas has stopped the elections in Gaza that were meant to actually bring a different government to their people. They're blaming Israel.
Hang on a minute. Hang on. With respect, it's not Hamas who has stopped elections in Gaza. It is the Palestinian leadership in the West Bank who postponed those elections. Look, I need to press on with this. A senior Hamas leader... hold on for 1 second. A senior Hamas leader who has direct knowledge of the ongoing mediation efforts, and I really want to stick to these mediation efforts because you say everybody wants a de-escalation at this point. So let's just drill down on what's going on here. A senior Hamas leader telling CNN that efforts to broker a truce have stalled over two main points. And let's just discuss those. The first being Hamas's insistence that Israel stop its provocations at Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem and for a resolution of the Sheikh Jarrah forced eviction threat to be met. The second being Israel's insistence that any ceasefire begins by Hamas at least 3 hours before Israel stops any military strikes, and Hamas flatly rejecting this proposal. So the question that many people are asking is, will Israel stop its provocations in Jerusalem, find a resolution for the Sheikh Jarrah residents, and meet halfway on the ceasefire timing? What are your thoughts?
Well, Becky, I'm so glad I'm on your show because I have seen that in recent weeks you've been interviewing mainly Palestinian leaders and teachers and activists, and barely any Israelis have been on your show. And
oh, hang on a minute. No. I've got to stop you there. That is absolutely not true. We always provide platform for... No, I've got to stop you there. I have to stop you there. With respect, I have to stop you there for one moment. We have been interviewing people on both sides.
It's only the Palestinian point of view. The reason why Hamas have fired rockets has nothing to do with any kind of Israel's measures. I just want to remind you that more than 2 weeks ago, Hamas fired 32 rockets into Israeli cities. Israel didn't respond to that. Did you actually publish that? As any of your viewers have seen it, Hamas attacked Israel. 32 rockets more than 2 weeks ago. So, you know, this is not the real reason behind that. The Al-Aqsa is under danger. Blood libel that's going on for more than 100 years is boiling up every time during the Ramadan month. Every year
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you because this conversation is going to go nowhere if we go down a route which is simply untrue. We have interviewed Naftali Bennett. We have had the Mofa spokesperson on speaking, and I could go on with a list. So let's just move on here, because if we get into a conversation which is about he said, she said, we're not going to get anywhere. Look, let me put this to you. A military source in Israel has confirmed.
Now, and you're not letting me even tell that to you about everything that's really been happening in Jerusalem, because that hasn't been brought up to your viewers as well. But if you don't want me to answer those questions as well, and about those blood libel that they're spreading about the Al-Aqsa Mosque, that every year are creating violent riots in Jerusalem.
Let me put to you what the international community is concerned about. It's not about what we are doing on the show. It is about what we are just reflecting the international community's position, for example, through the United Nations. And they are extremely concerned. We hear an almost unanimous voice, bar what we've heard from the US at the UN, about concerns about provocations at Al-Aqsa, provocations in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood, and indeed the civilian casualties on both sides of this conflict.
Becky,
so let's talk about de-escalation at this point, because surely you agree that is what is important.
Because if you are speaking about Jerusalem and about Al-Aqsa and what's happening there, it's very important for me to also say a note. It's been more than 100 years that Al-Aqsa has been an excuse for massacres in Israel. In 1921, that was the reason for the Jaffa massacre of Jews, that Al-Aqsa is in danger, that someone's going to take over Al-Aqsa. 1929, that was the reason for the murder of more than 40 people in the city of Hebron, Jews, who their neighbors have murdered them. Every single year, this blood libel that Al-Aqsa is at risk is one of the main reasons that there's violence and there's murders around Israel.
Let's talk about 2021.
That are actually murdering Jews, and it's extremely important to understand that this is a blood libel.
These are all tragedies. We must talk about what's going on now. We must talk about what's going on now. How do we provide a solution at this point? And how do you suggest, as the US has asked, that there be a de-escalation in this violence today?
Okay, well, you need to understand, Hamas is committing a double war crime. They are hiding behind innocent civilians, Palestinian civilians, and are hiding their facilities in civilian areas, in hospitals, in schools, etc. And they are also targeting innocent civilians as well. What needs to happen is for Hamas to just stop shooting its rockets towards Israeli, and by the way, also Palestinians. I want to tell you about a Palestinian family in Saleh, in Jabalia, which 8 people were killed. Among them were 2 children. They were killed by Hamas rockets that fell on their houses. Hamas actually hit some of its power grid. Once Hamas stops its aggression and stops firing rockets towards innocent civilians, Palestinians and Israeli, then you will see a decrease in the tension, and hopefully we'll be able to actually finally finish this round of violence.
That is everybody's hope at this point. Let me get straight to the scene on the ground. Thank you for joining us. Ben Wiedemann is in the